mean, first thing first, don't memorize.
Okay.
Okay, all right. So, I mean, I think I've always been against people sort of doing rote learning.
The only thing that you have to commit and do is to pay the career amount with the project you did. So for example, if you don't complete the minimum price of the career, you're out.
Different. People that study business, they think in a different way. People that do engineering, they think in a completely different way.
Thanks.
Maybe in the beginning, you were like going through the same high school, your socioeconomic environment was pretty much the same, but just because of the 4 years that you spent differently doing different degrees, completely changes the way you start sort of seeing things.
So related to that question, what do you think about the educational system in Spain?
I think we like the longer we have something, we start taking it for granted.
Yeah.
So I think like when we miss that, like the absence of that thing makes us grow fonder of it. And then I think this is like just to borrow from this movie Rocky Balboa. Okay, so like it's not about how hard you get hit or how many times you get hit. It's more about how many times can you get hit and get back up.
Yeah.
Hold on. What is my purpose? What is my purpose in life? Find that purpose, find that goal, and then once you have set that goal, on the way, it's not just about reaching that destination, it's also about enjoying the journey as you're going there.
¿Qué tal, chavales? Hoy estamos aquí en una nueva sección que se nos ha ocurrido, que es entrevistar a profesores de universidades, ¿no? Entonces, hoy estamos con Azeem. Hi, Azeem. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
So for those who don't know, Azeem is our Introduction to Corporations professor. What do you think it is the most important reason why people should study Introduction to Corporations?
Okay. I mean, first of all, just so for the people who don't know what Introduction to Corporations is, it's just like an introductory subject to business studies. So people that have studied maybe IGCSEs or A-levels, they're maybe, or even IB, they're a little familiar with this whole concept, but it's just to bring everybody up to speed because this is like the first semester at university in the first year. So it's just to give everybody this notion of what it means to not just be in business world, but also how to run businesses. So essentially everything from what it means to be a good CEO, a good leader, what it means to analyze the business environment, what it means to make decisions, even when things get rough and tough. Okay, so essentially that's pretty much the gist of it.
So what do you think are the biggest challenges that companies face nowadays? Like problems with all the people that they have to control, and what do you think are the biggest problems there?
In terms of the biggest problems, I would probably say, I mean, there's many. I mean, there's at least like 6 different themes that I can already think of in terms of the problems. I would probably start, let's say, with this whole geopolitical uncertainty that we're going through. All right, so I think for leaders or even for business and corporations, this is a huge thing that affects them. Okay, so it makes things very, very difficult for them to understand. And of course, that leads to economic uncertainty. And of course, like when you put them together, it's like a double whammy. Okay, and then the shifting consumer preferences, they don't help either. So all of these things combined, and the technological disruption that we're seeing right now with AI, with a lot of these things that you see right now, with cybersecurity issues, data analytics that you have to include, even blockchain. So these things are complicating and adding a lot of noise to the business world. And it becomes even more important that not just students, but also leaders of now and in the future, even employees and great professionals, they know how to analyze that information, get key insights from it, and then be able to remove the noise and get to the real information that matters. Okay.
So talking about AI, that is something that has like pop up in the last month or years. As a professor, how do you see AI in education? Because nowadays a lot of students are using AI. So how do you see it?
Okay. I mean, I'm very pro technology. All right. I consider myself to be very tech savvy as well. And then I think this is also one of the skills that I try to develop in my students. that technology is a tool that was created for humans, and humans need to use it, and then they need to feel empowered. Okay, so I remember, like, let's say maybe when my parents were going through university, they didn't have access to Google like I did. Okay, so they had to sift through libraries. I mean, I probably still do. I don't know about you guys. Maybe you are more into ebooks. All right, but I think Google as a search engine, it meant that you guys have more information or more access to information than what maybe US presidents at some time in the past had. Okay, and then now your generation, so my generation grew up on Google, search engines and stuff like that. We had free access to information, but you guys not only have free access to information, but you go one step further. You have access to very compiled, very specific, very detailed information. So, I mean, I'm specifically sort of referring to generative AI, like the likes of, you can say, ChatGPT, Midjourney, and a few others. Okay, like I know some of my students, they also use tools, not just to summarize information, but also to create presentation slides. They improve the notes they make in classes, in the lectures, and they use AI, they train AI with GPTs, they train specific GPTs, and they feed all that information, and ChatGPT helps them improve their notes. Okay, so here, essentially, it's like having not just a professor in your pocket, but it's having all the subject matter experts in your pocket to some degree. Okay, I'm not saying it's perfect. There's still a huge room for improvement. It's in infancy and early stages, but even the version that you and I have access to for free is a huge step up. It's a huge game changer, not just for education, but also for many other things. Okay, so in that regard, I am 100% pro ChatGPT, pro generative AI.
One thing that, for example, when I came to the university, I mean, we have different professors, but for example, in you, I see like professors that are not boring, but that, I mean, they are like a very relaxed people, you know what I mean?
Okay.
But you, for example, are like a person that talks a lot, moves. What do you think that are important characteristics to actually be a good professor, or to get the attention of the students?
Okay. First of all, I can promise I don't do cocaine. Okay, so I mean, I teach first thing in the morning. I teach at nights as well. So a lot of my students, they usually say the same thing. Azeem, how is it possible that you have so much energy? Does it matter the time? You have like this contagious energy that you sort of exude, and then this aura, and then the charisma. And then, I don't know, I think it stems from this aspect that I love what I do. And I'm really good at it.
It is crazy, like, how people in our class, I mean, there are like so many people that they just don't care about the subject and they just go to class because they have to go to class. But it is crazy how people in your class, usually they like participate, they are active, because I don't know, it's like you're transmitting that energy to our class. So people want to participate and do different things, and I think that that's something that other professors should try to do.
I mean, in this case, I'm very fortunate because the subject that I teach, by its own nature, it's very interesting as well. So, I mean, I don't want to put down any of the other subjects. So I think that's like a plus for my side. And then the other thing is, just like you guys are doing YouTube content. So the platform is there, provided by the institution, but the content is created by the people that are there. Okay, it has to be interactive. You have to engage by the content creators, but also the viewers that you have on your channel. So for me, it's pretty much the same. I see the institution as a platform, just like YouTube. And then education is something that I don't just come to a class and deliver content. It's something that we co-create. And co-creation only happens if I create an environment where my students feel sufficiently confident that they can say whatever they want in a learning safe environment, and that they will not be judged. Nobody's going to think harshly of them. Nobody's going to belittle them. It's more about sharing of ideas. It's more about expressing your opinions, and then trying to understand why your colleagues, or why specific people, specific leaders, as we do in the case studies, how they sort of decide specific things, why they think differently to I or you, okay? So in this case, for me, it's more about creating this environment where co-learning can happen. It's not just me about coming there, giving a sermon or a lecture. It's more about eliciting ideas, helping you develop your own thinking, okay? So for me, it's always been, from the beginning, it's always been about teaching through case studies, teaching through interactive ways of learning.
As a professor, do you have like any advice for a student in order to memorize some things? Like, for example, if you want to prepare an exam, what do you think that are the best steps in order to study?
I mean, first thing first, don't memorize.
Okay.
Okay, all right. So, I mean, I think I've always been against people sort of doing rote learning, because essentially, like, they sort of cram a day or two before the exam, and then afterwards they completely forget about everything. Okay, so I think that the best way to sort of not just learn, but also to do well academically in exams and stuff is spaced learning. Okay, so maybe a week before the exam, read things, understand them, okay? Think and analyze the whole concepts that have been taught to you, try to find relationships between them, and then make that subject your own. Okay, because everybody has their own understanding. Yeah. So if you are trying to memorize the words that I use in my lecture notes, of course, you and I have a different way of thinking. Yeah. Maybe you and I have a different way of explaining things. So you will never really be able to understand the deep down concept. And then the other thing is, like, even if you do sort of read things well in advance, like maybe a week before the exam, you always have to recall that information. And then what you need to do is you have to recall it like maybe a day or two after you read it. You read it, you understand it, and then maybe 2 or 3 days afterwards, you try to recall that information. And then by doing so, not only do you not have to memorize things, they naturally come to you because it makes sense to you now. And it makes sense to you because in your own brain, you have like specific rooms where you've made sense of it. It's like for me, it's like the Rubik's Cube. All right, so you've managed to solve that Rubik's Cube puzzle in your head, and then you make sense of the subject for yourself.
So, related to that question, what do you think about the educational system in Spain?
Yeah, or do you think it's useful? Because I've seen a lot of conflict between people, because I've seen that a lot of people think that it's useful because they can make sure that they will have success in the future, but other people think that it's not useful because maybe it will not bring you to some place that you want to be. I don't know, what do you think about that? Yeah.
Okay. All right, so let me just break it down into steps.
Yeah.
All right, so first thing, in terms of what I think of the Spanish education system, I mean, I've never really studied in the Spanish education system for me to do a deep dive into it. Okay. But from what I hear, okay, from what I know, and then a lot of people that tell me that yes, there is some sort of emphasis on knowing things, memorizing things. I think that also happens in other educational systems. Yeah. You need to know the things but of course, maybe it's not to the extent that you just regurgitate it on a piece of paper in an exam and then you forget about it. Yeah. It's to some degree, they still develop your analytical thinking. They develop problem solving. They want you to think creatively rather than just memorizing something and then just trying to understand concepts. Okay, and then for me to link that to what Nico's asking, in this case, I think a lot of the times, the skills that you develop matter a lot more than the knowledge that you have.
Yeah.
All right, so I think knowing the content is not really as important as learnability. I mean, that's the skill that I think employers value a lot more.
Yeah, the last week we had an interview with a guy. It was called Joaquin Danvila. So we launched the podcast today, and we talked about it, and he told us the same thing, exactly the same thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. I 100% agree with that. That's why I always sort of harp about learnability, because you're gonna have many different subjects. So as a student, even now, I always think myself as a student. this aspect of continuous learning by like I'm a very curious person. Okay, I always want to learn about new things, even very useless stuff. All right, so I like to expand into general knowledge. But I mean, this aspect of learnability, why is it important? And then this aspect of discipline and not sort of, focusing on memorizing. Because you're going to have many different subjects that you like, subjects that you don't like, subjects that are difficult, subjects that are quantitative. What you need to do is you need to have the discipline that regardless of whatever is being fed to you, that you can process it, and then you have the ability, you have developed the ability to break down that piece of information and then sort of use it for problem solving.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, for example, I don't know if you know, there is a university here in Madrid that is called Lane.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Lane, that is like an entrepreneurship career
Okay.
where like you go to the university and they told you, okay, so you need to develop a project and make, I don't know, 2,000 euros in 6 months. For
No,
example.
the main things is that you have to create a project. Yeah, what he said, but the main rule or the only thing that you have to commit and do it's to pay the career amount with the project you did. So for example, if you don't complete the minimum price of the career, you're out. It's like kind of something like that.
Rough. Okay.
Yeah.
If you make $40,000,
Yeah.
then you can just leave the college
Yes.
with your title,
Really?
with your diploma.
So you've essentially fulfilled the objective, and then there's nothing more they can teach you because you've self-taught yourself.
And I wanted to ask you something, because now with all this thing about AI, there is people thinking, because I mean we all know that languages are important, such as knowing English or French, but there are people that think that now with AI, you don't have to have at all like a good level of English. Do you think that is true?
And
Well,
actually, adding one thing to this question, do you think that languages in general are as important as they were? Like, do you think you have to know French, English, Chinese, or whatever, or just with English you're okay, like good to go? What do you think?
Okay. In this case, like, do you remember, like, in the past when we didn't have our phones?
Yeah, of course.
We used to have to remember people's phone numbers.
Yeah.
Okay, so people were good at mental math. Okay, and then we didn't have like calculators in our pockets. So a lot of the times, like whenever you were out and about, you would usually do some sort of mental math. And then over time, if you realize it, now we place a lot less importance on that particular skill of memorizing, knowing people's phone numbers.
Yeah.
Like I could probably ask you, hey, tell me Danny's phone number or Nico's phone number. You probably don't remember. Like, but you probably call them or you talk to them like pretty much on a daily basis. So in the past, that's a skill that maybe, like, let's say my parents or my grandparents or your grandparents, they had that skill. But you and I, we probably never had to develop it because of technology. All right, I mean, is it good? Is it bad? I would say developing mental math is always a huge advantage. All right, so imagine right now, if we are in a meeting and then we were negotiating about specific tasks, and then this happens in real life as well. A lot of the times, there are people that are not numerically gifted. They sort of lose that ability, they never develop it. And then when they're talking numbers, it's very easy for them to miss key information. Whereas somebody else who's always emphasized on doing mental math, even though technology can easily take care of it, they always have a competitive advantage over them. So here, that's what I think of languages as well. Is it necessary for you to know those languages right now? When you have Google Translate, I know like you see a lot of tourists that come here from
And
other countries. They either show you the phone, they're speaking into the phone, and then it's speaking it back to you in your own language. All right, so that sort of solves a problem of communication. But it's still not the same. Is there somebody else who knows that language fluently? Yes, I still see that as a competitive advantage. It removes and it facilitates communication, but it's not a good replacement for somebody else who memorizes those things. And why do I say that? Because when you learn languages, it sort of structures your brain differently. Okay, so here I
yeah,
think
I believe in that. Yeah.
yeah, and then I think this is something that Nico you mentioned earlier as
Yeah.
well. So based on the degree that you're studying, the way that you think, the way that your brains it becomes structured is completely different. People that study business, they think in a different way. People that do engineering, they think in a completely different way. Maybe in the beginning, you were like going through the same high school, your socioeconomic environment was pretty much the same, but just because of the 4 years that you spent differently doing different degrees, completely changes the way you start sort of seeing things.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so I think like for sure, definitely technology is always there. Remember, technology is a tool that we need to use. It empowers humans, it removes a lot of these obstacles, but is never a replacement for those things. Should you continue to develop those skills that we are losing, like memorizing phone numbers or learning the languages by ourselves? Absolutely. Okay.
So what do you think is going to happen from now to maybe 15 years with all this technology that we have right now, and it is going to improve? Right now we don't have to study as much as maybe you had to like in the past, because we have so many tools and it is so much easy to study and to resume the information as you said before. What do you think is going to happen from now to 15 years? Like, do you think it is going to be that people is going to be maybe a little bit dumber because they are not going to have to study as much as you had to or we had to? What do you think?
Okay, first thing, I'm not sure on this, don't quote me on this, but I think as we are progressing,
we are getting dumber.
The average IQ
it's getting lower.
It's increasing actually, I think.
Do you think
really?
so?
I think it is.
I'm
not
I think it
100%
is
sure,
not.
but that's my perception. I mean, we can probably check later. But I think overall, people are becoming... Why? And why do I say that? Maybe that's my perception.
Yeah.
I feel the way that people are thinking and solving problems requires them to be more intelligent. All right, so we are learning from the mistakes that our ancestors have made, and naturally, I think we have frameworks, we have models, we have tools that are empowering us to be able to make better decisions, process information much faster, but also become slightly more intelligent in that regard. Okay, and then here I will give you another example. Like for example, let's say you only study to high school. And then maybe Nico does his undergraduate degree. He does his postgraduate degree. I do my PhD. So maybe initially we all started with the same IQ, and we are the same IQ, but just because people that have remained longer in education, that sort of increases their IQ by a few points here and there. And then it also matters on the discipline. So people that are studying in disciplines of STEM, so something related to mathematics, physics, or economists, I think those people, like it or not, they do increase their IQ by at least 10 to 15 points over the span of those 15 years that they've been in education. So based on that, I'm saying as we are progressing as civilization, as collective society, I do believe that maybe we are probably smarter than our ancestors are.
Yeah, that could be that could happen. Yeah, but I've seen a lot of people of our generation, or like how do you say, like younger.
Yeah.
But that they could be more intelligent, but they look a little bit more dumber. I don't know. They do like stupid things, and they say things that are not like appropriate.
So, do you think that we say with AI they're gonna go up different companies, or do you think that these companies that like Meta, TikTok are gonna be the ones that are gonna like create this AI?
Okay. Elaborate a little bit more, like by social media, like okay, so companies like TikTok, so social media companies, you're saying if they're going to be the ones that are going to revolutionize AI even more, or if it's going to be somebody who is completely unknown?
Exactly that, yeah.
Okay. I mean, it's very, very difficult to say. Okay, so the first thing that I would like to say is to address what Nico was saying earlier, is how like you see like this intergenerational perception Okay, so I always like, I mean, I think growing up, like you probably have heard of this too. Like if you sort of assess the ability of a fish to climb a tree, you will never
Yeah,
you will
yeah.
never say that it is
Yeah.
intelligent or something like that, because you are assessing it based on an environment where it doesn't necessarily belong. It doesn't have those skills. So I think
Understand.
for us it's pretty much the same. Like my grandparents' generation, when they probably look at me, they're thinking the same thing. They're like, what the hell is this person doing? And then for us, like it or not, we probably see the new generation in a similar way. And then I think intelligence isn't just one linear thing. There's many different forms of intelligence. And then I think that's probably one of the things that I'm saying. Maybe on some dimensions of intelligence that our ancestors were much better at, but because of how society is changing, how dynamic and how technology is disrupting a lot of these things, we are losing a few points on elements of intelligence that were important in the past but are no longer relevant. And then we are probably increasing much more on other elements or other dimensions of technology, like let's say this digital literacy, okay, technological literacy. This is something that my parents or my grandparents are not really good at, but the new generation is. Like I have nieces and nephews, like he was 2 years old and he was teaching my mother how to get on YouTube.
Yeah.
All right, so like who is smarter? So it depends. What are you sort of assessing based on? If you're assessing them based on knowledge, skills, or a specific field, of course, my mother's going to be far more intelligent relative to my nephew. But I think it's a matter of where you assess them. And then going to what Jaime, you were asking about AI, a lot of the times if you know, the old horses, they too try to innovate, but a lot of the times it's the smaller companies that have a bigger hunger and thirst, and then they need, the only way that they can compete, the non-factors as you will, that the only way that they can compete against the already established companies like TikTok is by completely disrupting.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so like they have to innovate, like it or not. So I think a lot of the times disruptive innovation usually comes from non-factors. Okay, because they have to compete in a way,
From a
they have
small
to find
company,
creative
you mean.
solutions to be able to just keep up with them. But I mean, large companies or already established companies, they have the resources.
Yes.
It makes it easier for them, but it's not as easy. All right, so I think they both go at it, but a lot of the times you do need new ideas that completely revolutionize things.
Yeah.
All right, so it's very difficult to say.
Yeah.
And going back to what you said before about new generations, I think that new generations, like nowadays, like kids nowadays, they grow up much faster than what we did in the sense that, so they do things that we didn't do with their age. Like for example,
Started drinking.
Yeah,
Watch
or-
things that you should not watch. Or,
Okay.
yeah, or maybe even just play with things that you didn't play when you were at their age. Like maybe when you were their age, you were playing football or soccer with your friends in the street, and now they are smoking
Yeah,
weed. I
they
don't know,
wanna
it's
they wanna
like-
grow up very quickly. You know. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that changed a lot. Like
Yeah.
that was not like that before, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, here I can give you two different perspectives.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So here, first thing first, I will say there are many students that I have, okay, that live in a very privileged bubble.
Yeah.
Okay, so those are people that perhaps in specific aspects of getting access to smartphones or devices, they get them easily.
Yeah.
All right, so at a very young age, they've grown with devices around them. Okay, so from that perspective, they grow and have access to those things much sooner than you and I did.
Yeah.
Right, but at the same time, because they live in this overprotective, privileged bubble, they do not grow in other aspects of life that perhaps you and I did. Like when you are playing out and about in the streets, you get street smart about specific social
Yeah.
skills and other aspects that maybe these new generations are not sort of emphasizing on. And in order to sort of compensate for that, maybe they're using these things. I don't know particularly, but the other dimension that you can probably think of this about is from students or kids from advanced economies, well-off economies, affluent economies, or emerging economies. So like these could be like where it's not as easy to go about, okay? So people in emerging economies, because of the hardships that they have to go through in life, like it or not, they grow much and they become mature. They have to do things that you and I probably never had to do, and they've had to start doing it at a very young age. Not because by choice, but because of their circumstances. So I think a lot of the times circumstances delay or accelerate your growth. Okay,
Yeah.
so in some aspects, we are probably fortunate that we didn't have to grow that early that maybe people in emerging economies had to.
And I remember one time in class that you told us that hard times make strong people, and that easy times make like people who are not prepared for what is coming or what they have to face. And there is like a, how do you say,
It's
like
a vicious circle.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
a visual circle. So imagine like if your grandfather was poor, he probably became richer or healthier.
Yeah.
Because he had to face very difficult times. Then his son, your father, he became a little bit less prepared for what it was coming, and then probably you, his grandfather, his grandchild, sorry, you're not prepared for what is coming for you. So do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, first of all, I'm very happy that you remember some things from my class. Shows that you paid attention and that you enjoyed it. And absolutely, like I firmly believe in that vicious circle, and I think statistically it's been proven as well.
Yeah.
I forget the number, but by the time the wealth of your grandparents, by the time the grandchildren receive it, the probability of it being squandered by them, that they take it for granted, they don't sort of generate new wealth with it, is very, very high. Okay, so like as generations progress, the likelihood of them not sort of keeping that wealth or progressing with that wealth is much higher. Okay, and it's definitely because of that. Because as you go along, you sort of take the comforts of life for granted. That you don't really have to develop those necessarily skills of survival, if you will.
Exactly.
All right, to be able to keep up. But again, there are ways, because I know like there are many movies as well, there are many families that sort of discipline their children from a very young age. That even though that we have access to this, it's my wealth. I need you to work your way from zero.
Yeah.
From the ground, like from the zero all the way to the top, and then you will pretty much do everything.
Yeah.
Right,
I think that. Well,
No, go ahead.
I think that the education that you receive from your parents is one of the biggest, like one of the most important things in life.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it keeps people humble, it keeps them down to earth, and then it helps you empathize with people who probably have that situation on a daily basis. Okay, so I think all of us over here are very, very privileged that we don't have to go through that. But in essence, if you start doing that with your children, and I think like in the Scandinavian countries, and then even in the UK, from a very young age, it's completely normalized that you start working even at high school as a part-time worker somewhere, because it's your pocket money. It teaches you about finance. It gives you that financial independence as well, and then that way you become a little financial savvy as well. From a very young age, you need to be taught these life skills.
Yeah,
And in the United States as well. Like when I studied there, like last year, and Nico as well, you see all the people in your class, they have a job and they have to earn their money.
And they all had cars. They were all independent.
Yeah.
Like you can start doing that at a young age.
Yeah,
What,
16
or even 15.
Yeah.
But it depends on the state.
and I mean, talking about that, I always thought that you must. I mean, it can be a little bit hard, but you must go to hard times in order to develop a good, not mindset, but also who you are as a person. Because if you have never experienced, and I am not only talking about working at 16 years old or 17, that is also good, but also going through hard times.
Breakup.
Yeah, for example, going through hard times, I think is, it's not something that that we like, but it's something that I think we can learn a lot of things, and we can also learn how good is to be happy, because there's a lot of people that is happy from a long period of time, and they don't value that. They don't value how good it is to have a relaxing life, maybe to call it. So.
Yeah, this is human nature. I think we like the longer we have something, we start taking it for granted.
Yeah.
So I think when we miss that, the absence of that thing makes us grow fonder of it. Okay, yeah. So I think a lot of the times, I completely agree with you on that regard, that resilience, I don't know if you know this, so there's a report, the Future of Jobs report. Okay, so they publish it, I think, every year or so. And then over there, they sort of list the top skills that companies, not just companies, but also life skills that you need to have in order to remain relevant. And especially now with AI being there in the equation, and then the whole aspect of society changing completely from the age that you were saying, hey, now the kids are growing much faster than we are in specific things. So all of this is essentially changing the skills that we need. And I don't know if you know this, I think resilience is definitely in the top 10. Okay, this aspect that you need, not only do you need to grow a thick skin, but you also need to be able to take on a few hits. Yeah. And then I think this is just to borrow from this movie Rocky Balboa. Okay, it's not about how hard you get hit or how many times you get hit. It's more about how many times can you get hit and get back up. So I think it's the same story. Here, this aspect of resilience, if you're always in this overprotective, privileged bubble, the day that bubble bursts,
that's true,
you don't know what to do. You never have developed, you've never spent that time to nurture those life skills. So of course you're gonna crumble. It's okay to crumble. It's okay to hit rock bottom. And then I think that's what in the US, like you boys were saying, in the US, I think one thing that they do really well is that they've normalized this aspect of failure. It's okay to fail. Yeah. And if you fail fast and learn from it. It's good to fail.
You learn a lot of things and I think everyone should be in rough times, because with that, as y'all said, you create a lot of abilities.
Yeah. In this case, I do agree with you that you only appreciate the brightness because of the darkness that you've been through.
Yeah.
Okay. You can't have light without
exactly
darkness, like the shadows in your life. But it's also about you can't always say that it's the tough times, that you always need to be surrounded in problems or tough times. You can and you should try to get out of those problems. And then definitely, I know many people who don't have any problems in their lives. Okay, and then they are just as good as people as we are, if not better. Okay, so sometimes some people out there, they're just gifted with those things, they can empathize, they understand other people's situation, they can put themselves in their shoes, and then they can make decisions based on that. And then the key thing, they never take that for granted. And then they always keep their shoes on the ground. They're down to earth, very humble people. And I think in Spain, this is one thing that I've come to admire. People over here are very, very humble. Okay, so just to give a contrast from the States, over there, it's perfectly fine to oversell yourself. And then in fact, it's encouraged that even if there is something that you perhaps don't know how to do, you should always try to say that I will find a way to do it and I will do it.
Yeah.
All right. And then here, in hindsight, so what Dani was asking earlier as well. So the Spanish education system and the society over here, it revolves around sort of attaching specific negative connotation to being ambitious. Mm-hmm. If you come across as a person that is too ambitious, maybe people say, wow, this person's arrogant. Yeah. Maybe this person is no longer humble. All right, so I think you have to sort of take that with a pinch of salt as well.
Yeah, that's
You have to be very careful of where you are. You have to be mindful of it, and then also know that it's not always the tough times, because there are many people that are always in a lot of problems and they just don't know how to get out. And even if they want to get out, they never can. They're stuck in that vicious circle, and then they're just living month to month. Okay, so many times, and this is one of the things that I always say, sometimes it's good that you take a step back and then you say, hold on, what is my purpose? What is my purpose in life? Find that purpose, find that goal, and then once you have set that goal, on the way, it's not just about reaching that destination, it's also about enjoying the journey as you're going there.
Yeah.
And then many times people forget that. Many times my students forget that as well. Like, it's not just about passing the subject. It's not just about getting the degree.
It's the process.
It's the process. You have to trust the process. And some of them
Trust
say,
the process.
oh my God, why am I studying this subject? It's completely boring. It's completely useless. Why am I learning this skill? It doesn't make sense. Why do I have to learn these languages? It doesn't make sense. So you see, the thing is, they haven't sort of submitted themselves to the process. Change doesn't happen suddenly. And if it does, it's very destructive. Okay, so breakups or car accidents, anything like that happen almost suddenly, the consequences are catastrophic.
Yeah.
All right. And then a lot of the times I always say, when you are trying to change yourself, you should think of yourself as the rock. And then with the flow of water, no matter how jagged or how rugged you are, with the flow of water, eventually over time, you become smooth. Okay. So that's like this erosion over time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so I think that's the sort of change that we need to look for.
I've seen an example that describes very good what you said, and it's when, for example, you're driving, for example, a Ferrari.
Yeah.
The good part or the best part is not driving at 300 kilometers an hour. The really good thing is like get from 0 to 100 in 3 seconds, like the process that what you said. Yeah,
the adrenaline rush that you
yeah,
get
exactly.
from it.
Yeah, that's
absolutely. Okay, I mean, I see that you have like a thrill for speed. Okay, all right, be careful with that. But I mean, as long as you're responsible, by all means, do it in a safe environment.
Yeah. Moving on to another topic. One day we were having a conversation, and I remember you said that college is usually made for those who want to follow the usual path, that is like the Matrix. So it's like just working all your life and then spend the last years of your life enjoying with your family. Do you think that college is necessary in order to succeed in life, or you can just skip it, and not skip it, but maybe just go on your own and find your own path? What do you think?
I mean, there is no one right path to success.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody's found their own ways, and that they've carved their way to success. So a lot of the times, I mean, I get arguments from my students. They say, hey, a lot of the successful entrepreneurs that you see right now, there are college dropouts, right?
Yeah.
But then I tell them, you have to realize that this student,
was
from a
not
very
his
young
path,
age,
yeah.
he was on a very successful path. For them to even be able to hit an Ivy League college, that alone demonstrates that they were far above average. And then at the age of 18 or 19, for you to even think about sort of juggling academics with a hobby or any other thing like a passion project that leads into something that a little bit more successful. Mm-hmm. I mean, do they happen? Does it happen? Yes, it does. Okay. Are there people that are on YouTube that are making millions? Absolutely. But that inspires people to follow them. But there are many that probably don't even get a lot of views.
Yeah.
Okay. So in real life, it's something very, very similar. So people arrive to that point not because of what they are or who they are. Many things happen along the way. All right. So there are some people that would not have become successful had they not been to college. Whereas there are many other people that they only got success because they dropped out of college.
Yeah.
Okay, so it matters. And I think a lot of the times it's about knowing, is it the right timing? Because having the right timing is also crucial.
Yeah.
All right. So I don't know. Recently, I think yesterday I was watching, and today I was discussing with my students in class. This company that's very, it's very, very known now. Ring Bell that Amazon purchased.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I've seen it in the Shark Tank.
The Shark Tank.
Yeah,
thing, the whole
exactly.
thing. Like in 2013, he proposed this idea to the
no,
investors.
They are worth billions.
Lame.
And then they, of course they shot his idea down, and then so it's this whole story that you need to know that if you are not at the right place, you will not get the right worth or the right value for who you are.
Exactly.
Okay, so a lot of the times, over time he proved them wrong, and then even now, and I think he's gone back to Shark Tank as an
he
investor
went
as
back.
well. I've seen the same thing with Just Eat as well. And there's another one, Just Eat.
Oh yeah.
Like these similar platforms where people bring food to your house.
Yeah.
I remember there's a show similar to Shark Tank. It's called Dragon's Den. So I think it was about in 2008. So there was I don't know if it was Just Eat or something similar. They pitched this idea about having a platform where people would order food from restaurants and then it will be delivered to your house. In 2008, they said there's no way that people would want to do that, because the whole idea of going to a restaurant or eating out is the immersive experience, living the dining experience. But now, fast forward a few years, they initially started the whole idea in Denmark. They were very, very successful. They replicated it in the UK, and I think the rest is history. Now it's everything. Like for us, it's very common, it's very convenient. Yeah. But this didn't happen. Maybe at that time, for that generation of people that were investing in that, they didn't see it. So as I said, one of the key challenges or one of the opportunities that come up is based on shifting consumer preferences. So right now, your generation, the next generation, they value this aspect of immediacy. I want it now. Okay, so I think that also enables a lot of these companies to carve their own path to success. Okay, so just remember, and I always tell people, don't let somebody else determine your purpose in life. Exactly. Find your own goal, and if you want to achieve it, let it be you who says, I want to change my goal. Don't let other people determine you cannot do that, you cannot do that. All right, so here, I have a good friend of mine. I think at a very young age, he was told that he cannot be an investment banker. Okay, so he just was not good at math. He was just not gifted with it. There are two types of people. People that sort of impose self-limitations on themselves, and then they start believing that, yeah, maybe they're right. Maybe he's my teacher telling me I'm not good at it, and I know I'm not good at it. But he didn't take it that way. He took it as a challenge. He says, maybe right now I'm not good at it, but if I put enough time and effort into it, I can be just as good as the next person. He put extra time and effort into it, and then today he's a very, very successful investment banker. And then he got this intrinsic motivation, this fire, this spark in him. So every time people told him, no, I don't think that you can become an investment banker in the future. You're just not gifted. You just don't have the right skills. You're not the sort. I don't see you in that profile. That would fuel him. That would motivate him.
Yeah,
even
and
more.
he believed in him.
He believed in himself.
Yeah, I've seen something that I really believe in. It's that be careful what do you believe in, because belief in some things create reality. Like if you believe that you will be the best doctor in the world, you eventually be that one, So I think everybody should think very carefully and don't consider the things that people tell them, because they have their own path and their own ways. So you just have to, what you said, think and think your own path and your own goal, and believe it and go all in it. Yeah.
There is an example. Do you know Ilya Topuria?
No.
So he's an UFC fighter, and he's gonna fight this weekend for the World Championship. and so he's like this guy who has like a very
He has a very good
perception
mindset.
of himself, and on the Instagram profile, on the bio, on the biography, he put world champion. Like if he already was
He visualizes it.
yeah. So he says that he's already the world champion. Like he knows he's gonna be the world champion. So we'll see what happens this weekend. But I think that's also important, like how
It's
you
Sunday,
perceive
right?
yourself, like
Yeah.
how you.
And then I think like I'm pretty sure there are many people that are gonna say, "Wow, such a cocky guy.
Yeah,
Or-
He's
yeah,
so
yeah.
arrogant, so
Yeah.
overconfident, that he's not humble." But at the same time, like, and then this is something that I always say, like with Formula One drivers, there's like what 20 odd Formula One drivers,
yeah, 20.
with tennis athletes as well. They are at the absolute epitome of their own discipline. Over there, every next guy in terms of skill, it's such a minute difference. And then over there, what matters a lot more is the psychological aspect, your determination, your ability to focus in such high stake, high risk aspects, okay, and then your ability not to crumble under pressure. I will take this from. Do you know Hamilton?
Yeah.
And who was the other German that sort of
Vettel?
Nico
you mean?
Rosberg?
Yeah.
Okay, so here I remember like Nico Rosberg, he is very, very skilled, but he just couldn't keep up with Hamilton. And he had to take 1 year. He had to completely sort of change everything just to keep up and then to put himself in the zone.
There is that battle is very interesting, right? Because Nico Rosberg and Hamilton were in the same team in 2013, 14, 15, and 16. Okay, so Nico Rosberg was 3 years until he beat Hamilton. But the thing is that there is a video of Rosberg and Hamilton choking when they finished the race in Abu Dhabi, right? And Rosberg won. Okay, so they talk about how Rosberg was crying, was saying that it was the toughest year of his life, that and Hamilton was there like chilling, and he almost won. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, here having the mindset, the right mindset. So a lot of the times, people talk about having fixed mindset and growth mindset. So I always say you need to focus on having a growth mindset, and then you need to develop this ability to be resilient. All right, so think of Fernando Alonso. I think hands down, there's nobody in the sport, in the industry, that would not say that Fernando Alonso is very, very skilled. Even with an underperforming car, he demonstrates time and time again that he is far above average in comparison to the
Because
others.
he's very known for that. Because out of the great drivers like Hamilton, Verstappen, they almost have every year the best car. But the year they have a middle car, they start going crazy. You know what I mean? But Fernando is like a very relaxed guy that says, okay, I am gonna relax, I'm gonna focus on my sport, and maybe the next year I have a better year. You know what I mean? So that's actually very important also to like not going crazy when bad times happen.
But you know, like, I mean, here, what helps him a lot as well is he doesn't need to prove anything.
Yeah.
He's been a world champion. All right, so I think that sort of removes a lot of the pressure that he can chill. Many of the other younger drivers who probably have never won that, maybe they have that pressure that they need to prove. But I mean, when you are like in the top percentiles, the difference between a win and a loss is a lot of times things that are beyond your control.
Yeah.
Like you're driving perfectly fine, your engine fails. Who is to blame? The engineers, the reliability of the materials.
Yeah.
What do you blame? Like, can you control that? I
Yeah,
don't know. To some
it's-
extent.
yeah.
So they try to control everything possible. So to the extent that Rafa Nadal, he has like this whole ritual that he includes this superstition thing
The
about the
bottles,
bottles not going over the line, and even before a serve, he does exactly the same
hair,
things.
yeah.
So what they're doing is they're saying the difference between the best is so little. What if the other person is accounting for chance, for luck, for superstition, and I am not?
Well, for example, there is a video of Rafa Nadal when he was going for a match, that he was like running and doing this, and then the guy that was going to I mean, to do the match against him was like.
That's usually always the same. Like Rafa Nadal is preparing himself mentally, he's jumping, he's getting ready for the match, and the competitor, the other one, he's just like waiting for the match to start.
Yeah, I mean, every now and again, like you see like people that are born with innate talent, and then people that like Nico Rosberg, they have talent, but that talent has been achieved through hard work, sweat, and tear over the years. So they've a lot of the times people say hard work beats talent.
Yeah, exactly.
And it does. Like, I mean, talent alone doesn't get you to places. Like with talent, you need to still have a work ethic. You need to develop discipline. So Hamilton clearly has that.
Yeah.
And then of course, like he has a very focused mindset as well. A lot of the times, like at the pinnacle of the sport, what matters is the mindset as well, the psychology behind it. It takes a huge toll on these people as well. And then here, I remember like you were I don't know, one of you were asking me, I think it was you, this thing about, do you go, like, how do you achieve success? Through college or by dropping out? So just to go to UFC back again, in the UFC, like, there's like this Russian champion, I think, Federico.
I don't know.
All right, so he's like this big guy. He's not the usual muscular person who knows a lot of different martial arts. He does, but he's not. He's got like this dad bod. He's got like a lot of, but he's really, really good. And then people sort of say, "Wow, he's not the usual standard stereotype of what a UFC champion looks like."
Yeah, like a red one.
Yeah. He's not like sort of perfect toned muscular.
Yeah.
But I mean, he has muscles for sure. But I mean, it's under a lot of. He's not perfectly toned, but he wins. He has like the discipline. He has strategy.
Yeah.
But he's amazing at it. All right. So many times you will see people like that are complete anomalies, that they don't follow the usual trends.
Bueno, chavales, pues hasta aquí el podcast de hoy. Espero que os mole la sección esta, donde iremos trayendo a más profesores que veamos y demás, y pues hablaremos sobre la asignatura que den y tal, y nada, esperamos que os haya gustado y nos vemos la semana que viene.
Hasta la próxima.
Chao.